At first glance, Cowboy Bebop seems like a fast-paced and stylish take on the Western, mixing both sci-fi and noir. I mean, the very first words in the show are technically,
I think it's time we blow this scene. Get everybody in the stuff together. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
but by the end of the first episode, Asteroid Blues, as you see our apathetic protagonist, Spike, interact with outlaws Katarina and Asimov, the cold and slick exterior of both Spike and the show shifts tone into a much more pensive and melancholic feel. It doesn't end with the victory for our protagonist. He doesn't get glory or gold. He watches as Katarina chooses death over a doomed life, one where she can't live out her dream, leaving her lifeless body to float away in space as Spike watches. The episode ends with a haunting sense of loss. It ends right where it started, with seemingly no gain. This genre-defying anime series is set in a futuristic world where humanity has colonized other planets and moons. It follows a group of bounty hunters aboard the spaceship Bebop, and the show blends elements of sci-fi, westerns, and noir, all underscored by a memorable jazz soundtrack. And as you continue watching, you realize the show is episodic, with each new episode having a standalone story ranging from a fun slapstick adventure to an existential drama. On the surface, this format feels like a series of disconnected and incoherent events, with no real purpose. You watch the repetitive cycle of Spike, Jet, Faye, Ed, and even Ein, as they live dependent on that next bounty, just to fail and end up right where they were at the beginning of the episode, drifting through space. And that was brilliant to me, because that's the point. These characters are drifters, bounty hunters moving from job to job, never staying in one place long enough to build meaningful connections or establish roots. Just as the episodes are disconnected, so too are the characters. The seemingly non-existent impact each episode has on the narrative reinforces the monotonous cycle they go through every day, waiting for something to happen. They may live together on the Bebop, but they remain emotionally distant from one another, frozen in time, with each new adventure they go on subtly reshaping their mentality and helping them understand the very thing keeping them apart: their pasts. Cowboy Bebop explores the lives of its crew after the most pivotal moments in their stories have already passed. Each of them are living in the aftermath of their personal histories, wandering aimlessly through space, chasing bounties, not just for survival, but as a way to distract themselves from the unresolved chapters of their lives. By the time we meet Spike, Jet, Faye, and maybe even Ed, their defining moments, the ones that shape them, are behind them, leaving them with the emotional and psychological baggage they now carry. And the show instead focuses on how they manage the consequences of who they already are. When it comes to confronting the past, there are many ways people cope, and Cowboy Bebop illustrates these ways through its characters, with each embodying a different response to the weight of their history.
Men only think about the past right before their death, as if they were searching frantically for proof that they were alive.
Jet Black is the broken-hearted, responsible ex-cop turned bounty hunter, whose sense of duty and integrity often made him feel like the emotional core of Cowboy Bebop. Also known as the Black Dog for his relentless pursuit to catch criminals, similar to a dog that sinks its teeth into its prey. While Spike may seem like the protagonist, Jet's grounded, relatable nature oftentimes made him feel more like the true anchor of the series. He's the character we learn more about first, and his personal struggles, betrayal, loss, and disillusionment were something I gravitated towards, as I saw him as someone who embodied both vulnerability and resilience, unable to escape from what has been. Ganymede Elegy explores Jet's life before the Bebop, as he returns to his home planet only to discover that time has seemingly not passed. He's greeted with ex-coworkers and visits his ex-girlfriend Elisa, only to discover that she has in fact moved on, and it's Jet who remains static, literally symbolized with the frozen stopwatch given to him by her. We learn that he promised himself that once the watch stops, then he'll leave his home to start a new life. Yet, it was that same watch that had trapped Jet in the past, and what he really sought after was closure.
When I came back home, the only thing there was that pocket watch. That and a small piece of paper that had just one word written across it, farewell.
Although Elisa was unable to give it to him as she already found a new life with Rint, her current boyfriend. Jet then decides to confront the two, who are caught up in a petty crime scheme and a bounty on Rint's head. Though Jet's instincts tell him to pursue justice, Elisa's request for him to leave Rint alone causes Jet to pause. She finally admits the reason why she left Jet, and it's then we understand why the moniker Black Dog doesn't just apply to his career, but to his whole life. It was Jet's overbearing sense of control that led to the downfall of their relationship. And in the end, Jet doesn't let them go, knowing that it'd be best if he caught them himself. But in a bittersweet moment of growth, Jet realizes that some things are beyond his control, and he figuratively and literally is able to release the weight of his past with Elisa, moving forward in life and throwing away the watch that was keeping him stuck in place. Jet's ability to make amends with his past before anyone else is part of the reason why he is the captain of the crew. He's the glue keeping everyone together and has a somewhat stable relationship with everyone. And it's that ability he gained that allows him to deal with the betrayal he faces in Black Dog's Serenade, better than anyone else in the series is able to with their own past. Jet's journey illustrates how confronting one's past can lead to personal growth and closure, highlighting the importance of accepting and letting go.
Lesson. If you see a stranger, follow him.
Edward is short and sweet. She's the character we spend the least amount of time with, yet she's probably the most memorable. It's her character that provides a much needed contrast to the dramatic crew. She floats around with a loud, carefree, and childlike innocence, but she too has a complicated relationship with her past. Abandoned by her father and left to fend for herself, Ed grew up isolated on Earth in the chaotic remnants of a collapsed society. She's learned to survive through her brilliance as a hacker, navigating the world with a whimsical detachment that may suggest she uses her eccentricity as a coping mechanism. Her cheerful demeanor masks the reality that she, too, is a wanderer, someone searching for a place to belong, even if she doesn't overly express it. This is made clearer in Hard Luck Woman, where we see a different side of Ed, a glimpse of her deeper longing. When she finally finds her father, we see he's just as eccentric as she is, and after inviting her to join him, he gets distracted and leaves her again, chasing his own goals instead. This unknowingly helps Ed grapple with her past, and we see a much quieter and reserved version of her. She seems to have accepted this reality without bitterness or regret. So, she quietly leaves the Bebop, without saying goodbye in her usual over-the-top fashion, leaving only a message instead, marking the beginning of the end. Without Ed, the Bebop feels noticeably emptier, as if the piece of the crew's soul has left with her. After preparing dinner, Jet is faced with a quiet ship. He searches for life and finds Spike looking solemnly at the message Ed left for them. Without saying a word and a huge dinner prepared, the two decide to eat away their pain. It's then clear that Ed's innocence and upbeat positivity meant something to them. Jet felt like a father figure towards her, even trusting her with his precious bonsai collection. And for Spike, well, before she leaves, she gives him a pinwheel. A pinwheel being symbolic of Ed's lightweight freedom, always in motion and accepting the currents of life. She's essentially offering a piece of herself to him. And Spike, in turn, places the pinwheel on the head of the ship, showing not just his growing attachment to his crew, but as a reminder of Ed and what she represented. Life is about movement, and nothing lasts forever, but it's your worldview and willingness to adapt that'll get you through it. Ed meant more to him than he let on, which is why Spike places it at the spearhead of the ship. Though it's a small and simple object, it speaks volumes about Ed's understanding of life and offers a subtle message to Spike. Life moves on, and so should you.
Survival of the fittest is the law of nature. We deceive or we are deceived. Thus we flourish or perish.
Faye Valentine. the femme fatale literally frozen in time, and the woman with no memory of her past. After a mysterious tragedy, Faye undergoes cryogenic stasis for decades and awakens to find herself in the future where she has no connections, no family, and no history. She's duped by grifters into believing a false narrative about her life. Her entire identity is built on lies, and her attempts to reconstruct her past often lead her into deeper confusion. Faye spends much of the series engaging in self-destructive behaviors, reckless gambling, conning others to pay off her enormous debt, and distancing herself emotionally from those around her. This is her way of coping with the emptiness she feels. She feels as though everyone is out to get her. So when the Bebop crew comes along, she takes that mentality with her. And even then, they can't help fill the void she feels because she leaves numerous times. However, as she begins to uncover her past, particularly the return to her childhood home, she realizes that even if she could piece together who she once was, she can never go back to who she once was, reflective in her trying to rebuild the layout of her old home. For Faye, the tragedy is not just the loss of her past, but the realization that her present and future may be just as empty. The home she once knew is gone, the people she loved are no longer there, and the world has moved on without her. Faye's arc is one of existential displacement and the human struggle to find meaning when the foundation of identity is shattered. But fortunately, this revelation allows Faye to let go of her emotional defenses. She no longer needs to run, lie, or hide behind the hardened persona she constructed to protect herself. For the first time, Faye has a sense of clarity about her identity. She realizes and understands that she doesn't have nothing. What she had all along was the support from the Bebop crew. So, she returns to the much quieter Bebop with the hope of starting over, no longer chained by the past and ready to form a real connection. Yet, not everyone in the crew has come to terms with who they are, mainly Spike. And this is where the tragedy of Cowboy Bebop continues.
I'm not going there to die. I'm going to find out if I'm really alive.
Spike Spiegel, the charismatic and laid-back protagonist, the former hitman haunted by his past life with the Red Dragon crime syndicate. And his whole character and the point of the show can essentially be summed up with this one line.
I've been seeing the past in one eye and the present in the other.
Spike's character has been in limbo throughout this entire series, just waiting for something to happen. Much like the episodic nature of the show, he's been in a dream he can't seem to escape from and feel as though he's already died. His cybernetic eye is a constant reminder of the trauma he's faced and firmly cemented the memories of his former life deep into his skull. But as the series progressed, we saw Spike subtly grow from each new encounter and kind of process some of the issues. He seemed to grow closer to his comrades to the point of actually caring about these people. They made him feel something again, to the point where he could possibly escape that so-called dream. This is made evident when he seeks Jet's approval to go see Julia again, his love from his former life, and relive those memories. Whereas Spike in the beginning of the show may have never asked for permission, and when he visits Julia, he has a numb look to him and doesn't embrace her like she does. He seems to be ready to actually say goodbye, but clings on for a moment of closure. So they spend a little more time together, and eventually... When Julia dies, in my opinion, Spike tragically fails to escape his past. The weight of everything before begins to crumble on him. He returns to the Bebop and shares one last moment with Jet. Jet knows what Spike is going to do and understands. He's been there before, and as much as he wants to help him, he also knows Spike won't let that happen. So, as Jet learned to do so earlier, he lets Spike go. But Faye, ready to start over, stops Spike.
You told me once to forget the past, because it doesn't matter.
But you're the one still tied to the past, Spike.
The scene where Faye and Spike argue in the hallway is phenomenal. Faye is ready to live a new life with these people. She pleads for him to stay, and he tells her that he's been living in both the past and present, made clear when he finally opens up to her and tells her about his life, solidifying the present but still trapped by the burdens of the past. He tells her he needs to find out if he really is alive. Now, while a cool and stoic moment, Spike here is letting himself crumble by the weight of yesterday. He's choosing to essentially ignore what he has by focusing on an old life. Realistically though, there was no escape for him, as Vicious, the now new leader of the crime syndicate and his enemy, would have hunted him down regardless. It's almost an impossible task to move on from so much hardship, but his refusal to open up and seek support from the crew until the very end is a significant part of his downfall, as it leaves him isolated in his suffering. So, in his final moments, Spike takes the fight to Vicious and confronts his past alone, rather than continue running from it. It's a tragic acceptance of the fact that his dream, the life he wished to reclaim, is over. His last fight is not just about revenge, but about closure, even if it cost him his life. Spike's inability to escape his past is a key component in the downfall of the Bebop crew, as he was the last one to do so. It prevented close friendships and possible romance, if you like to think so. While it is crucial to confront the past, it's also equally important to seek support from those around us. In the end, his choice to face Vicious alone symbolizes the ultimate cost of isolation, reinforcing the theme that connections with others can be vital in overcoming our histories and providing hope for our future. For me, the true tragedy of Cowboy Bebop was that the characters never really felt like a crew. Just 4, or 5, lost souls seeking surface level comfort in one another. In fact, they really don't do any jobs together, oftentimes leave the crew altogether, and constantly bicker. Granted, Jet and Spike are the closest thing to partners, but there's still a level of mystery to their dynamic up until the very end. They all let their past define their present. Everyone had either been betrayed or hurt and took those feelings to the Bebop. But just when they started to get closure from the past, just when they opened up and learned more about one another, and just when it started to feel like a family they've been yearning for, it fell apart. Their connection, though real, was fragile, too dependent on unresolved pain to ever become something permanent. Spike, Jet, Faye, and Ed were all on the verge of healing, but by the time they began to see each other for who they really were, it was already too late. The cracks were too deep, and the inevitable pull of their past tore them apart before they could fully embrace the bonds they formed. In the end, the tragedy is not just their inability to escape their past, but that they were so close to finding solace in each other, only for it to crumble all away. You really have to be grateful for what you have in the present. Don't let the weight of the past entirely define who you are. While the journey towards healing is deeply personal, the connections formed in the present can be immense support, if only you recognize and embrace them. Because you can either have both eyes focused on the past or the future, but you can't have both. Or else...
Bang.
You're gonna carry that weight.